Today's video is sponsored by our friends at Squarespace. They're going to get you started down the path to website glory because they've got every web tool you could ever need. If there's one thing we know from things like YouTube, it's that this is the age of creation. YouTube channels, bloggers, web stores, social media, influencers. You either have a great idea yourself or you probably know someone who does. And when it's time to move that project from your head to the screen in front of you, that's where Squarespace comes in. It's the perfect web tool to help you fashion the internet into whatever you want it to be. Maybe the hands-on type with lots of opinions and ideas about what exactly your website should look like. If so, very cool. Squarespace gives you all the customization options you could ever want with no updates, no patches, no technical BS to worry about. Or maybe you just need something functional, something that works with minimal thought so you can stay focused on the content and not the coat of paint. If that's the case, just use one of their quick and beautiful templates. And once you're done setting up your website, locking in the name, maybe playing with some of the colors, there are so many extra features that Squarespace provides so that your website can thrive. Email campaigns, patronage portals, social integrations, member-only areas, analytics, commercial options, 24/7 customer support. Everything you need is in one place. So when you're ready to get started on that next project of yours, big or small, it involves a website, it's got to be with Squarespace. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/brainfood and you'll save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. And now today's video. They can be found everywhere in Japan, clustered around train stations or busy retail strips. Garish neon-lit parlors, the air inside thick with cigarette smoke, thumping techno music, and the deafening clang of thousands of careening steel balls. 24 hours a day, row upon row of patrons sit before large cabinets intently as these balls bounce their way towards a potential payout. This is Pachinko, the national pastime and obsession of Japan. Filling much the same niche as slot machines or video lottery terminals, Pachinko attracts some 7.8 million regular players every year, more than 1 in 16 Japanese citizens. Yet unlike its North American cousins, Pachinko is not regarded as gambling, at least not officially. Casino-style gambling has been illegal in Japan for over a century, so Pachinko parlors are instead classified as an amusement service along the same lines as video game arcades. But through a convoluted system of loopholes and workarounds, Pachinko operators managed to skirt the gambling laws and grow the pastime into a massive industry that generates up to 25 trillion yen, or $250 billion every single year, nearly 4% of Japan's total GDP, and more than the total gambling revenues of Las Vegas, Macau, and Singapore combined. It is a controversial fixture of Japanese culture, a seedy underground economy with ties to the Yakuza and corrupt police officers, and which has been blamed for countless social ills from crippling addiction and financial ruin to the deaths of children. Pachinko, like its cousin pinball, which, by the way, for a time was illegal in parts of the United States due to it being considered gambling itself, until one fateful day when a man played the greatest game of pinball of all time before lawmakers, including sealing the deal by calling his shot with everything on the line. You can see our video when pinball was illegal for more on that. So yes, back to Pachinko. Well, it traces its origins back to bagatelle, a billiard-style game from the late 17th century in which players use a cue to send balls into pockets guarded by upright wooden pins, with a penalty being incurred for every pin knocked over. Players quickly found constantly resetting falling pins tiresome, so the pins were eventually fixed in place, allowing the ball to be ricocheted off them into the pockets. In the late 18th century, the board was mounted at a slight angle and the billiards cue replaced with a spring-loaded plunger, creating the game of Japanese bagatelle, the ancestor of modern pinball. By the 1920s, the game had further evolved into a variant known as Corinthian bagatelle, or the Corinth game, which used a completely vertical pinboard. Around 1924, this game found its way to Japan, where it became known as Pachi Pachi and later Pachinko after the clanging sound made by the falling balls. At first, Pachinko machines were installed in candy shops, where children could play to win candy and other small prizes, but within a few years, the game had caught on as an adult pastime as well, with the first dedicated Pachinko parlor opening in Nagoya in 1930. From there, the game's popularity skyrocketed. In less than 6 months, 35 parlors were in operation in the Kochi prefecture alone. However, due to the outbreak of the Second Sino-Japanese War and the Second World War, all pachinko parlors were shut down between 1938 and 1946 in order to conserve raw materials and manpower for the war effort. After the war, however, the pachinko industry grew faster than ever, reaching a peak of 387,664 registered parlors, or 3 parlors per square kilometer in 1953. The game quickly became a national obsession, accounting for nearly half of all Japan's leisure activities in 2016. Traditional pachinko machines are relatively simple devices compared to their slot machine and VLT cousins. To play, players must first purchase a tray of balls for around 400 yen or $4 each. These balls are 11 millimeters in diameter and usually printed with the name or logo of the pachinko parlor. The player loads these balls into the machine one at a time, and it launches them vertically using a spring-loaded plunger. Originally, the player controlled the launching force of the plunger directly, but on more modern machines, a knob is provided to adjust the force of an electromagnetically driven plunger. The launching force determines where the ball lands on the vertical grid of metal pins. On many machines, the pins are mounted on a rotating drum, which also incorporates a series of cups, traps, and other obstacles to make gameplay even more challenging. The object of the game is to land the ball in one of the winning slots at the bottom of the machine. When this is accomplished, the machine enters a payout mode, or ryaki, which is often accompanied by flashing lights and loud music. During a Riachi, a large payout gate opens at the bottom of the machine, into which the player must shoot as many balls as possible before the Riachi ends. Each ball the player lands in the payout gate releases around 10 to 15 more balls, which are collected in another tray at the bottom of the machine. Over the decades, pachinko machines have become increasingly sophisticated, with modern examples being themed after popular movies, video games, and other media, and incorporating video screens featuring complex animations. Many machines have even replaced the traditional mechanical pin boards with purely digital ones, the payouts being determined by a computer algorithm. A more recent development is the Panchi slot machine, the Japanese equivalent of the North American VLT or digital slot machine, and it's aimed at younger players. Most pachinko machines are operated by dedicated parlors, which house multiple machines in a single location. The largest of these, located in the Shibuya fashion district of Tokyo, houses 1,100 machines on 5 floors and can cater to up to 15,000 patrons. Such parlors are usually located around train stations, busy shopping districts, and other places with heavy foot traffic, and often provide a variety of extra services for patrons, including snack bars and restaurants, and even childcare facilities and refrigerated lockers where housewives can leave their children and their groceries while they play. Another common fixture of pachinko parlors are attendants who patrol the rows of machines and swap out the players' ball trays during payouts so they don't overflow. However, many experienced players have mastered the art of firing the plunger, turning around, quickly swapping out the tray, and turning around to continue shooting without causing the Riachi to end prematurely, an event known as a punku or puncture. Once a player has scored a payout, they can either use their extra balls to continue playing or redeem them for prizes, which range from candy and stuffed animals to rice cookers and, noteworthy, cash. While gambling has been illegal in Japan since 1907, this law only applies to games whose direct payout is in the form of cash. This creates a loophole that the pachinko industry has cleverly exploited to create a lucrative but technically legal gambling market. In order to exchange the pachinko balls for cash, players must first redeem them at the pachinko parlor for so-called special prizes, typically gold-colored plastic tokens, stuffed animals, or other easy-to-carry items. Players must then carry these tokens to a separate shop outside the pachinko parlor where they can be exchanged for cash. The tokens, which are micro-tagged to prevent them from being sold outside the system, are then sold back to the pachinko parlor at wholesale prices, while the cash exchange shops are typically owned and operated by the pachinko parlor itself, as they are nominally outside of it and separate from the parlor. In the eyes of the law, the whole system does not technically count as gambling. Using this convoluted 3-shop system, the pachinko industry has been able to keep operating in a legal grey zone for nearly 100 years. It's totally gambling, though, in every way. Unsurprisingly, given its shady and highly lucrative nature, for decades the pachinko industry was dominated by the Yakuza or Japanese mafia, who controlled cash payouts and extorted large commissions from pachinko parlor operators. Due to its association with organized crime, pachinko has long been considered to be a dirty business, resulting in most parlors being run by outsiders on the fringes of Japanese society. In more recent years, however, the Yakuza's grip on the pachinko industry has been all but broken thanks to a series of major police crackdowns. The industry is now regulated by a dedicated police agency which regularly inspects pachinko parlors and machines to prevent cheating, fraud, and tax evasion. In an effort to fight the latter, in the 1990s, the police forced most parlors to switch from cash to prepaid payment cards, allowing transactions to be more closely monitored. But while this regime was ostensibly established in service of the public good, critics have accused the police of becoming the new Yakuza, with investigative journalist Jake Adelstein describing the whole regulatory apparatus as the police's own personal retirement plan. Yet, even beyond its association with the Yakuza and corrupt police agencies, Pachinko remains a controversial part of Japanese culture due to the high rate of addiction among its players. But like Las Vegas-style gambling, which lures players with the promise of large single jackpots, the pace and payout rate of Pachinko is much slower, encouraging long gaming sessions and loyal repeat customers. The plunger ball firing mechanism also adds the illusion of skill and control, making the outcome seem far less random than it actually is. Some players have managed to make a living playing Pachinko, mainly by attending the openings of new parlors or only playing newer machines, which are often rigged to dispense more frequent payouts for the first few days in order to attract new customers. But as with all forms of definitely gambling, most players only lose money, up to 10,000 yen or $100 a day. Particularly vulnerable are Japanese housewives, who typically control the household finances and are less likely to hold a full-time job, giving them more spare time to devote to Pachinko. This led to the common sight of children being left unattended in cars or on the street as their mothers spent hours at the Pachinko parlor. However, due to a series of high-profile incidents in the late 1990s where a number of children died of heat stroke while waiting for their mothers, most Pachinko parlors now display "No Children Allowed" signs, and parking lots are regularly patrolled for unattended children. Yet, despite its nearly century-long hold on Japanese life and culture, the Pachinko industry may be in danger of disappearing altogether. The industry has seen significant decline in recent years, with the number of Pachinko parlors dwindling from over 380,000 in 1953 to only 17,000 today. Gross pay-ins have also dropped from 30 yuan to 19 billion yen over the past 20 years, and the number of new players has fallen by half between 2002 and 2012. Part of this decline is due to changing demographics. Younger players have less spare cash than their parents and are increasingly turning to mobile apps for their gambling fix. Today, the average Pachinko player is in their 40s, a number which skews even older with each passing year. New smoking bans have also significantly impacted the industry, as for many years Pachinko parlors were one of the few places that Japanese citizens could smoke in public. But perhaps the greatest threat to Pachinko is the very industry for which it's substituted for nearly 100 years: legalized, government-regulated gambling. In December 2016, Japanese legislatures passed a law legalizing casino gambling in the country, a move that was expected to add an additional $10 billion annually to the government coffers. In the years since, developers have moved quickly to build large integrated gambling resorts which threaten to supplant the traditional Pachinko parlor. In response, the Pachinko industry has lobbied for the passing of a unified Pachinko law, which would allow Pachinko balls to be exchanged for cash within the parlors themselves and place the industry under direct government supervision. Such a scheme, advocates hope, would give the much long-maligned industry much-needed legitimacy and generate an additional $2 billion in tax revenue. Meanwhile, Pachinko parlors are adapting to the changing gaming landscape by catering to a new generation of more casual players. Newer parlors, catering mostly to women, are cleaner and quieter than older establishments and feature cheaper 1 yen balls and lower payouts, creating a more relaxed atmosphere, free of the stress and stigma traditionally associated with the pastime. Such changes have allowed the industry to increase profits as the number of parlors continues to dwindle, with net earnings growing from $3.5 to $3.8 million between 2017 and 2018. Thus, despite recent challenges, it appears that the signature clang of the Pachinko parlor will continue to be heard across Japan for some time to come. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. Don't forget to subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching.